Hi there! Dawnforger continues with the double banner drop featuring Liushih alongside Cheyenne. Liushih represents the first step towards the revival of the Hydro element, offering respectable personal damage and a bit of utility for summoners. At the time of her original release, she may have looked like the team's new V6 hyper carry, but with the benefit of foresight, we now know that crown eventually falls to Collida. Instead, Liushih, alongside Springfield's upcoming expansion key, transitions the Hydro team into a dedicated summoner archetype, though as of right now, it will still feel a bit lackluster. Global players will have to wait a few more patches for the necessary reinforcements to arrive before the Hydro element can reclaim its spot at the top of the meta. Be that as it may, we're here as usual to break down Liushih's kit and gameplay, her investment breakpoints, her best build, and her overall strengths and weaknesses. Without further ado, let's get into it. At the start of battle, Liushih summons Pegasus to her side. Like Papasha City Warden, Pegasus cannot die and will enter a phase of standby when taking lethal damage. Pegasus inherits Liushih's initial stats and will be responsible for a large portion of her damage output. Liushih begins the battle by using her ultimate to deal single target Hydro damage and launch Pegasus into the joint op state. While Liushih's abilities follow the convention of listing multipliers as attack scaling, they are in fact under a new typing called load attack. This means that the attack portion must be substituted with 20% of Liushih's HP. Consequently, the 90% attack multiplier of her ultimate should be understood as an 18% HP multiplier. Unlike Springfield, who had a mixed attack and HP scaling, Liushih is the first character to purely scale off HP. Simply put, imagine a Liushih with 30k HP to be equivalent to a traditional DPS with 6k attack. I believe the developers follow the conventional attack-based skill description in her kit to help us players better understand the magnitude of her multipliers. Before Liushih climbs onto her stallion to unleash the attack, her passive activates. While not visible in this situation, prior to her ultimate or her S1, she applies a debuff Lock On for 2 rounds to her target. Lock On reduces your enemy's defense by 30% when receiving attacks from Liushih or physical summons. This effect is unique and stacks with other defense reduction debuffs. Indeed, even at lower investment, this is the main reason to include Liushih in a future summoner lineup. Resuming the action, Liushih deals damage equal to 18% of her HP. Then, Pegasus enters joint ops. In this state, it will follow up with its own attack after Liushih, called Gatling Cannon, dealing 110% attack, or rather 22% of its HP as Hydro damage, while also restoring 1 Confectance point. This state lasts until Liushih uses her S2 or Pegasus receives lethal damage. Joint Ops is immediately activated, making Pegasus fire off its Gatling Cannon. At V0, the attack ends here. In this showcase, Liushih is V1. With this upgrade, Pegasus will repeat the attack at the end of Liushih's turn against the nearest target. This means significantly more damage and Confectance points. Starting from round 2 and onwards, Liushih sticks to using her S1. This is another single target attack with the same multiplier as her ultimate, equal to 18% of her HP. The skill consumes all available Confectance points, granting 1 stack of marksmanship per point, which increases the damage multiplier of her basic attack. Here you can see that her index was completely empty to apply the buff. After her damage goes through, Pegasus follows up with its attack while in the joint op state. This also restores a Confectance point for the S1 next round. Then, because Liushih is V1, Pegasus repeats its attack once more for a total of 2 Confectance points. As the attack concludes, Liushih gains an extra action. You're familiar with this mechanic from other Hydro characters like Tolo. Since this is an independent turn within the same round, Liushih's V1 will take effect twice, making it highly effective. Because her S2 does deal damage, Liushih follows up with her basic attack after the S1. Her basics have the same base multiplier as her ultimate and S1, but each stack of marksmanship increases the multiplier by 10% or by 20% if she's at least V3. This increase is relative to the attack scaling notation. With 6 stacks of marksmanship, the multiplier is at 30% of her HP and equal to a conventional multiplier of 150% attack. Additionally, Liushih's passive further increases the basic attack multiplier based on her initial attack stat. For every 60 attack, the multiplier is increased by 5% up to a bonus of 50% or 600 attack. At 6 stacks of marksmanship, this yields a final multiplier of 200% attack, or rather 40% of her HP. As you can see, her basics are her hardest hitting attack, especially if she manages to cycle her Confectance index properly. Note that she is currently back at 3 points after having just consumed her index. This is because Pegasus' Gatling cannons restore 1 point each time, plus her active attack restored a bonus point due to Springfield's shared telepathy buff. Following her basic attack, Pegasus unleashes its attack twice as we've seen before. Now her index is fully replenished. At V0, she requires her 6 fixed key to accomplish this. With that key, she gains 1 confectance point once per round per summon attack, excluding Pegasus. This means she's reliant on 2 other allies with summons. Due to Springfield's expansion key, one of those is taken care of automatically. The other slot could go to one of Nikita or Florence, or you simply live with 5 stacks of marksmanship for the time being. Now, before Liushih's V2, you generally want to avoid using her as 2 unless necessary. The skill lets you select a tile in a 4 to 8 tile cross-shaped area to which Liushih and Pegasus will teleport to. Think Liu Kei's ultimate, but without the damage. In fact, the skill does really nothing besides repositioning Liushih and Pegasus. While the skill grants extra command, which theoretically allows you to continue your turn as usual, it comes with the downside of ending Pegasus' joint op state. Therefore, you'd be forced to reactivate this state via her ultimate, which means a damage loss as compared to using the S1 plus a basic attack. In normal map content you'll likely have to use it in order to get Pegasus into attack range, but in bossing content it's best avoided. Once Liushih is V2, this downside is removed, plus the skill will create tideway tiles in the area. It's a bit hard to see here, but the V6 Liushih creates the tiles along the linear path of her movement via her S2. The tiles last for 2 turns, and the skill has 1 turn cooldown, so with her V2, Liushih can permanently maintain Hydro weakness against an opponent. Given that Mitchell takes over the job as the team's tile generator, Liushih's V2 is not worth it on its own. Again, at lower investment, it's best to avoid this skill during a battle, unless you're out of attacking range without it. That's everything you need to know about Liushih's kit. It doesn't get much simpler than that. Use the ultimate at the start to launch Pegasus into the joint op state, and from then on simply use her as 1 plus a basic attack every round. Unless Pegasus receives lethal damage, or you're forced to use the S2 for repositioning, there's no need to use the ultimate again. In normal map content with spread out enemies, you won't be able to avoid the S2 though, so don't forget about the ultimate afterwards. If your Liushih is at least V2, you can weave her S2 into the rotation every other round to generate tideway tiles, in case you want to inflict the enemy with Hydro weakness. Here's the damage overview for this Hydro Burn mixed lineup. Liushih's damage contribution is respectable at just V1R1 as compared to the V6 Lewis. Of course, the V6 Springfield certainly helps make her look good, and Lewis's damage would be a bit higher with Tolu instead of Nikita. Regardless, this should demonstrate that Liushih can contribute solid damage at a reasonable price. More importantly, Liushih is the first step to modernizing the Hydro team towards a summoner squad. Except for Springfield, all current members will get replaced, though Tolu with her expansion key is usable. Among the upcoming characters, Mitchell and Collider have higher priority, but if not for her damage, then Liushih likely secures her spot due to the 30% defense penetration debuff. Moving on to her investment breakpoints. Liushih is usable at V0, but unlike most damage dealers, she has a front-loaded spike in her power progression. As demonstrated in this showcase, her V1 makes Pegasus execute an additional attack against the nearest target at the end of the turn. Because Liushih has an extra action baked into her S1, this essentially amounts to 2 additional attacks and confectance points per round. Together with her signature weapon, her V1R1 performance is about 2.5 times her V0 output. If you intend to build the new Hydro team, this investment point is quite recommended. Anything more than that incrementally adds to her damage and is purely a luxury for spenders or those truly passionate about Liushih. Most notably, her V3 doubles the basic attack multiplier bonus for marksmanship, here called precision, from 10 to 20%, and her V6 doubles the number of marksmanship stacks gained. As usual, the final upgrade results in the largest increase in power, but she doesn't gain anything that changes her gameplay or utility. Liushih's signature weapon offers her a massive performance improvement over the alternatives for the simple reason that it comes with HP rather than attack as a base stat. Then, the weapon effect increases her and Pegasus' Hydro damage by 20 up to 40%, plus it grants a basic attack crit damage bonus from 15 up to 30%. Note that the weapon effect explicitly states when it applies to a summon. Normally, weapons that grant damage bonuses only apply to the character. The next best alternative is Bittersweet Caramel due to the 10% defense ignore trait. Its performance is about 27% worse though. Not far behind is Liushih's Purple Sniper Rifle, as it is the only other option that provides HP rather than attack as a base stat. It also comes with a modest damage bonus of 7 up to 17% for both Liushih and Pegasus. Lastly, if you have none of these options, you will have to make do with the Samusek. It offers crit damage and 10 up to 20% bonus damage for Liushih specifically, and results in a performance loss of about 32% as compared to the signature weapon. If you want to use Liushih regularly, picking up her weapon is highly recommended, though her V1 has the priority still. Her optimal attachment set is the new Summon Boost set. It provides both the wearer and their summon a 20% damage bonus. Other attachment set effects only apply to Liushih and not Pegasus. If you don't want to start farming all over or substitute with a generic alternative in the meantime, use Phase Strike or Close Assault. Farming the new Summon Boost set is recommended though, as you'll see an effective performance increase of about 5% over the alternatives. Her stat priorities are HP and crit, but keep in mind that you need to reach a base attack value of 600 to max out the basic attack damage bonus from her passive. Liushih reaches at most 585 attack without her equipment, so you will need a little bit of extra. Since one of her fixed keys grants her bonus crit rate, you can use flat attack on one of the attachments, which is slightly better than attack percentage due to her low base value. Alternatively, you can get the missing attack from a common key. Next, Liushih's fixed key setup always includes her first key, which grants both Liushih and Pegasus a 20% damage bonus during the joint op state. Then, as noted briefly before, her second key increases her crit rate by 5% per stack of marksmanship. Marksmanship is gained by consuming her Confectance Index before activating her S1 and lasts for 1 round. Essentially, this bonus applies to both her S1 and the following basic attack. You should equip this key unless you get to 100% crit via her gear. Her sixth key is used at V0 to cycle her Confectance Index every round. With this, Liushih gains 1 point per different summon once per round, excluding Pegasus. With Springfield and her expansion key on the lineup, you already have 1 other summon helping out. Ideally, you want to have 2 to fully recharge her index. When Liushih is V1, she recharges 4 points by herself, plus 2 more via Springfield shared telepathy buff. You will still need the key if you run her without a V1 Springfield for some ungodly reason. Lastly, her third key can be used for buff removal prior to Pegasus' attack. This is perhaps useful utility against some bosses. For her common key options, the same rules apply as with the weapon attachment effects, meaning they don't work for Pegasus unless stated explicitly. Her own key is one option that specifically targets Pegasus, granting 10% bonus damage while also offering 5% health. One of the few other usable options is Michti's key, which grants Liushih a 20% basic attack damage bonus. That's a good effect on her, since basic attacks are her main source of damage aside from Pegasus. The 5% attack will also help to reach the 600 attack threshold to max out her passive. Then, if you have parry, her key is not bad either. It grants a health bonus and a 10% elemental damage bonus for Liushih's second hit, which of course is her basic attack. If you don't have parry, you can simply use any other key with health as an attribute bonus. In summary, Liushih is a capable damage dealer who ushers the Hydro team into its new era. Prior to the arrival of Kollida, and at full investment, she may masquerade as the team's hyper carry, but that role is only temporary. At baseline, she functions essentially as a utility pick, providing 30% defense penetration for the new Summoner archetype. I emphasize new because in contrast to older units like Nikita or Florence, this lineup features newer characters whose summons contribute a significantly higher share of the team's total damage. As such, be prepared to rebuild the Hydro roster from scratch and set aside resources for Mitchell and Kollida as well. Alongside Springfield and Liushih, they form the upcoming Hydro 2.0 meta. If you want your Liushih to be more than a simple defense penetration bot, her V1R1 performance offers a significant damage increase at a reasonable cost. Indeed, unlike many damage dealers, a large portion of her power progression is front-loaded. Rather than being forced into the usual binary choice between V0 and V6, you are looking at a genuinely valuable early stopping point. On the flip side, it's unfortunate that you're almost forced to pull a signature weapon due to a lack of viable alternatives. While most characters typically gain only 0 to 10% performance from their weapons, it's closer to a 30% boost for Liushih. Being the game's first pure HP scaler effectively invalidates all other options. Furthermore, she is more or less restricted to the dedicated summoner team, plus maybe a Hydro Burn hybrid for the time being. While this level of specificity isn't unique, it contrasts with the versatility of characters like Lorelei, Cheyenne, or the upcoming Saxons and Groza. If you are pulling Liushih for gameplay reasons, keep in mind that you are committing yourself to a very specific team archetype. In conclusion, Liushih is a worthwhile pickup for commanders focused on building the new Hydro team. While her V0 utility is sufficient to earn her a spot on the lineup, her V1R1 performance offers a cost-effective return on investment. Her V6 output is respectable, but I would leave that level of investment to big spenders or those who count Liushih among their waifus. That brings us to the end of this video. I realized the pros and cons section was a bit shorter than usual this time around, but honestly, Liushih is a very straightforward unit to evaluate. As a damage dealer and utility character, she's completely tethered to one specific team. You either pull her to lay the groundwork for that future archetype, or you simply enjoy her for her admittedly exquisite dorm value. But that's enough from me. Let me know in the comments what your pulling plans are. Are you looking forward to building the Hydro Summoner squad, or does that playstyle hold no interest for you? In any case, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.